Tony was amazing in this film because there was like so much change you saw in him. You see him approach death or like be faced with death at several points in the film, and you see, like, for instance, I like the scene with his father, and his father talks about how he really just cares more about himself. He sees a lot of that in himself. If you remember that, where he's like,
the awkward hug with his dad.
Yeah, but he's like saying how he's more selfish than he is altruistic, right? Yeah. And you see that like kind of register with Tony, and he's battling with this whole idea of him losing his family, right? And he doesn't even want to join the Avengers at one point because he's like, look at all that I have to lose here. Yep. And yet by the end of the film, he willingly sacrifices himself.
He knows.
That was a great idea of this movie too.
Yeah, it was incredible. That whole arc throughout the film.
The one person who actually built something out of the turmoil. You know,
I was expecting 3 hours of Brie Larson, I'm not going to lie. Like...
I had that anticipation too.
Dude, me too.
So my favorite character in this, and you guys all know, I actually love Nebula. I loved her involvement in the story. I loved how there's two sides of her. I loved she's basically kind of like Two-Face. I relate kind of her experience and what she has. She's the links that she has and the Two-Face had in the Dark Knight, and how much impact he made. That's kind of what she was in this movie. She was this crazy entity that it was like had no idea how much of an influence or how much of an impact she would make until this just random thing happens, and it's just this random skewing moment that just pillar out of her eyeball, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's right. She has this like interstellar network that she taps into, and all of a sudden we're realizing that it's being breached. And so that in and of itself I thought was really, really cool.
Yeah. And that's another good twist.
I liked because
it threw me off and it surprised me. It was just like, holy, this is how they're going to propel her into this role. And
as many parts and limbs as have been removed and reattached, and how many times she's been pulled apart and reassembled, the anguish in her.
Yes, you feel it. You feel it in her face. You feel it in her eyeballs.
And it's kind of rough because it's like, man, you'd think she'd get used to this anguish, but man.
So is it trying for you? Is it almost cringy for you? I'm curious.
There have been times, but it wasn't in this movie. It wasn't in this movie necessarily, but
Jumanji.
It's either Karen Gilliam's like portrayal of it, or just the fact that, man, it's hard because like she's so robot that you're like, man, is there a point where you get over that?
I think they illustrated that well in this movie. I think because of you see her like being intimate with Tony, like she's caring for him, and like
she's literally tucked him in at once.
She's tucked him in.
I mean, think of it. It's just like Darth Vader, because he's mostly a cyborg or whatever, but he's going through intense pain all the time.
Yeah.
Well, but there's multiple scenes where Nebula is getting along with the whole team. So Tony, the whole opening shot, right? And then also there's the scene where she puts her hand through the force field to grab that ball or whatever it was.
And she's just basically like,
and then Rhodey looks at her and says like, because she's like, I wasn't always like this. And he's like, yeah, neither was I. And like she immediately like looks at him and like that connection there.
But that's a perfect point in the sense of where like that didn't bother her so much, but when she's getting pulled apart, maybe it's just Thanos knowing where to hit the buttons properly.
Probably, yeah.
When he's torturing her, because she seems to be pretty okay with the torture and the pain that she gets put through, or just losing to Gamora, even though she may just be like pissed off that she's losing. But when stuff like that with Thanos happens, she's like in actual physical or mental anguish, like where she's just...
But the best part of it is like every time that she has dragged through that, like through the pain, like we've seen it like 2 or 3 times now in this series, like where she is literally just suspended from something hanging from the ceiling, and just like all of her parts are just separate, just floating in midair.
Right.
And she gets rebuilt back together, and every time she does that, all she wants to do is like, please Thanos, so that doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. I could see that. She's
talking about like some daddy abuse.
Well, like I was saying before, it's an abusive father and a daughter. Like that is something that's very prevalent in society, and it sucks and it's crazy.
Can we each maybe do like our favorite character and why?
Yeah.
Maybe let's just go down the line.
Yeah.
What was yours, Rob?
Happy.
Who's Happy?
The assistant for Tony. The one that
comes
was
back.
like, I'm gonna get you all the hamburgers.
Well, that's.
I'm kidding, but Jon Favreau's only
That's
my
Jon
favorite
Favreau.
because he's gonna save Star Wars. He's gonna do it. But no, honestly, in the movie,
Let him direct episode 9.
like
save Star Wars.
overall, in like all of the movies, I think my favorite character is still Bucky. But that's just because I'm a huge Winter Soldier fan, and he's my favorite Captain America, which is that's what bugged me is it came down to like when Steve was there at the end, like you've got Falcon just kind of, and then Bucky's like. And it's just like, you gave him permission to be the next Captain America. It's like, you're going to screw up, then it's my time to shine.
Think about him,
Almost
man.
like,
I mean,
but-
if I'm as the Falcon, I'm like, dude, I'm not a super soldier.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, thank
and
you
Bucky
for the shield,
is.
but holy crap.
Yeah.
yeah.
You guys are both
well,
superhuman.
Yeah.
After a while, like, I don't know what's going to end up happening with it, but he's going to end up going back to being the Falcon. So, when that happens, Bucky, metal arm and all, is going to become Captain.
I don't think they won't give it to him because he's a white guy. They won't. I guarantee you they're not going to. That's just my opinion.
We'll put it back in the deck. You've activated my race card.
So Tony was amazing in this film because there was like so much change you saw in him. You see him approach death or like be faced with death at several points in the film, and you see, like, for instance, I like the scene with his father, and his father talks about how he really just cares more about himself. He sees a lot of that in himself. If you remember that, where he's like,
The awkward hug with his dad.
yeah, but he's like saying how he's more selfish than he is altruistic, right? And you see that like kind of register with Tony, and he's battling with this whole idea of him losing his family, right? And he doesn't even want to join the Avengers at one point because he's like, look at all that I have to lose here.
Yep.
And yet by the end of the film, he willingly sacrifices himself.
He knows.
That was a
yeah.
great idea of this movie, too.
Yeah, it was incredible. That
Well,
whole arc
the
throughout
one
the
person
film.
who actually built something out of the turmoil
Well, if you
and moved on.
Yeah, really, really cool.
the part that made him being trapped in the ship at the first of the movie for me
Damn good storytelling.
Yeah.
was, do you remember when the Scarlet Witch did the thing to his brain and it showed like all the Avengers just in a
Yeah.
heap in space?
Right.
Like now he's in the void of space looking like straight into the void like I'm gonna probably die.
And he's like,
Like-
I saw this too. Like, I saw
And
this
it's
in
just
my
like
head. Like,
the first thing that happens when they land is like Captain comes up to him, he's like, we couldn't stop him, and he's like, neither could we. And then he goes crazy, starts yelling at people, passes out, and then miraculously puts on a lot of weight really quick.
no, 5 years later.
5
Oh yeah.
years.
Oh, how long is it? Five.
No,
5
I agree
years?
with you,
5
Neil.
years?
That's what I think. Thor definitely had the best story arc in Infinity Wars as far as like going through adversity, and you know what I mean. And then in this movie, it's Tony. He has the most to lose, and that's what he tells Cap. He's like, dude, I'm down to try to restore what was, but I have something good.
Yeah, my priority.
Like, yeah, he's like my priority.
And
He's
this-
like,
this
and
is
he's
a-
the one with the most to lose. And at the end, like, dude, when he
'Cause-
looks over at Doctor Strange and he's like, this is
Iron Man
this is it,
started
like-
out with like he literally didn't have anything. All he did was like, you know, he had I'm trying to sell weapons to the government. And it was like through him being held captive, he's like, okay, there's more to than just like selling weapons and selling death to other countries. Like he saw exactly how flawed that whole system was, and he took on the Big Lebowski, and but he like goes through all this, and it's like through that one choice where he's like, you know what, I'm gonna start doing what's good for the world, not just what's good for me. And but you know, there's still like he's kind of self-centered, like the Stark Tower that had his like
Yeah, his
this
name
giant
on it.
like his name on it.
That's his whole spiel, is that he's kind of egotistical, right? Throughout the whole.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
But
his,
it's
that's
like
where all of
you
his
have
humor
to-
comes from.
you
That's
also-
why he's aloof as a character, and that's what part of what you like about him throughout the whole series. So it's really cool to see him finally become invested, and then to sacrifice what he's invested in. So
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think he's
you're
very
right.
intelligent in the fact that he also realizes that you need that persona, that public persona, to
Plus-
actually keep, you know, the bills being paid and keep that kind of thing rolling.
Plus, the whole thing with Bucky killing his parents, and like Captain America siding with Bucky on that, like, him and Captain made it through it. Because, like, I don't think Tony Stark from the first Iron Man movie, if he would have found out then, he would have never, ever given Captain America a second chance. He'd just be like, "You, Steve, I'm going over here." And then, but, like, since they've been through so much together, they're just like, we keep almost dying, but then we don't.
Dude, I know they're making up moment when they do their when they do their handshake. It was like that was their finally like their coming to terms from Winter Soldier, or not Winter Soldier, Civil War. Like, it was nice to see.
Started in Winter Soldier.
Yeah, it did start in Winter Soldier, but yeah.
Doctor Strange wouldn't even like tell Iron Man, right? That what was going to happen because he knew he wouldn't even make that decision. He knew
said,
he would not willingly at that point.
Is this the one?
Choose to sacrifice
I can't tell you, otherwise it won't happen.
Right. So like he was
on the
so
bandwagon?
far from that.
Because I gotta say, like, Iron Man's comic, never really that good. Like, it was okay, but it was never like top shelf Marvel stuff. Like when it came out of the gates, you know, it's gotten a lot better, but.
Your neighbor's
Well,
vacuuming.
It was X-Men, it was Spider-Man, it was the Hulk, you know. Thor was kind of off on his own little thing because he had some sort of, you know, it was almost like a Conan type of take on what Marvel was
people
at the
did
time.
people did make kind of they made fun of it in the 90s. I remember, you know, you and I are the same age. That was something that was definitely kind of made fun of. I remember the first Iron Man thing that came out was in like 1987 or 89 as far as animation in years. I mean, I was just like, I am Iron Man.
Kind of a cheese ball.
Yeah, it was very cheesy, and they were trying to bring it
been
in.
around for a long time.
But it was
around from the Silver
It's
Age.
kind of a funny thing.
But the funny thing is, like, oh man, he used to do that too. But he's the one who comes to mind too when I think about this, and that was the kind of thing that took me out of the movie, but still in the movie at the same time, was the fact that it's not only Tony, but Robert Downey, the way he's helped spearhead this thing and really pushed to like give himself more cred and more parts in each one of these movies, and it really paid off for the overall franchise.
And
Because his arc really came back around again. I mean, even to the very end where they're sending off his first arc reactor in that wreath.
Yeah,
out
and it's
into
like
the lake
proof
or
that
whatever.
Tony Stark has a heart.